The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Maya Rodriguez did not care. She sat hunched over her computer screen in the Deep Space Communications Array facility in Nevada. The desert wind howled outside the concrete building, but inside everything was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Maya had been working the night shift for 3 years now, and she loved these quiet hours when the universe seemed to whisper its secrets to her. Maya was a xenolinguist, which meant she studied alien languages. Most people thought her job was boring because aliens had never actually talked to humans before. But Maya believed that someday they would, and she wanted to be ready. She spent her nights listening to radio signals from space and looking for patterns that might mean something intelligent had sent them. At exactly 3:15 in the morning, something changed. A new signal appeared on her screen. It was different from anything she had ever seen. It was not random noise from stars or planets. This signal had structure and purpose. Maya felt her heart start beating faster as she realized what she was looking at. The signal was not meant for Earth. It was being broadcast across the entire galaxy in many different alien languages. Maya had studied 17 different alien communication systems that scientists had discovered over the years. She recognized pieces of Zephyrian mathematical code and crystalline hegemony frequency patterns. But there were other languages, too, that she had never seen before. Maya started translating the message, and what she found made her hands shake. Every single version of the message said the same thing. Stay away from Sector 7 Alpha. The Devourers have awakened. Do not investigate. Do not approach. Flee if you are already there. She picked up her phone and called Captain Jake Morrison at the Space Force headquarters. Jake had been her friend since college, and he was one of the few military officers who took her work seriously. The phone rang 4 times before Jake answered with a sleepy voice. Maya told him about the signal, and Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he said he would be there in 30 minutes. Maya spent that time making copies of everything and trying to decode more of the alien languages. The message was being repeated over and over from different parts of the galaxy. Whoever sent it really wanted everyone to stay away from Sector 7-Alpha. Jake arrived with coffee and donuts. He was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had been in the military for 20 years, and nothing much surprised him anymore. But when Maya showed him the translated message, his face went pale. They called other people who needed to know about this. Within 2 hours, the small communication room was full of important officials. General Patricia Hayes from the Pentagon was there, along with Dr. Carl Bennett from NASA and several other scientists Maya had never met before. Everyone agreed this was the most important discovery in human history. For the first time, they had proof that many different alien species existed, and they were all afraid of something in Sector 7 Alpha. The question was what humans should do about it. Dr. Bennett wanted to alert the United Nations immediately. General Hayes thought they should strengthen Earth's defenses in case whatever scared the aliens decided to come toward human space. But Captain Morrison had a different idea that made everyone in the room stare at him. Morrison suggested they should go to Sector 7 Alpha and see what was there. The other officials thought he was crazy. Why would humans go to a place that terrified advanced alien civilizations? Maya explained that the message mentioned devourers, and that 17 different species had sent warnings within 48 hours. This was not a normal threat. The debate went on for hours. Maya found herself agreeing with Morrison, even though it seemed dangerous. As a scientist, she wanted to understand what could make so many different aliens work together to send warnings. Fear was a universal emotion, and if these aliens were scared enough to coordinate their messages, then whatever was in Sector 7 Alpha was something extraordinary. General Hayes pointed out that Earth had only 3 deep space-capable ships and limited weapons. Going to investigate an unknown threat seemed like suicide. But Morrison argued that human curiosity and adaptability had always been their greatest strengths. While other species ran away, humans had always moved toward the unknown, volunteered to join any mission to Sector 7 Alpha. She was the only person on Earth who could translate most of the alien languages in the warning message. If they encountered other signals or communications, they would need her skills. Morrison nodded and said they would need a full team, including an engineer pilot and tactical specialist. By morning, the decision was made. The United States Space Force would send the USS Defiance to investigate Sector 7 Alpha, while other nations focused on defensive preparations. Maya would lead the communication and translation team. Tony Kim, a brilliant engineer, would handle technical systems. Lisa Carter, who was the best pilot in the Space Force, would fly the ship. Ben Hayes, a tactical specialist, would plan for any dangerous situations they might face. The other nations thought America was making a terrible mistake. The European Space Alliance recalled all their ships to defend their colonies. China and Russia did the same. Only the Americans were crazy enough to fly toward something that scared every alien species in the galaxy. Maya spent the next week preparing for the mission. She studied every alien language pattern they had discovered and created translation programs for languages they might encounter for the first time. She also tried to learn more about Sector 7 Alpha, but human maps of that region were mostly empty. It was too far away for detailed exploration, and nothing interesting had ever been detected there. The night before departure, Maya stood outside the communication facility and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien civilizations were hiding from something they called devourers. Tomorrow she would be flying toward that threat with 4 other humans in a single ship. Everyone said they were crazy, but Maya felt excited rather than afraid. Humanity was about to take its first real step into galactic affairs, and she was going to be part of it. The USS Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Sector 7 Alpha with a sound like thunder. Lisa Carter gripped the pilot controls as the ship shuddered from the dimensional transition. She had made hundreds of hyperspace jumps before, but this one felt different. The space around them seemed to push back against their arrival. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge, looking out at the star field ahead of them. 3 weeks of traveling through hyperspace had brought them to the HFY, most dangerous region of known space. The stars here looked normal, but Lisa's instruments were showing readings that made no sense. Tony Kim was bent over his engineering console with a worried expression on his face. The gravitational fields in this area are completely wrong. Space itself seemed to be twisted in ways that should not be possible. His sensors detected massive energy signatures coming from deeper in the sector, but they did not match any known phenomena. Maya Rodriguez sat at her communication station, trying to pick up any signals from the area ahead. The space was eerily quiet compared to the constant chatter of radio waves that filled most regions of the galaxy. It was as if this entire sector was holding its breath. Ben Hayes was studying tactical readings, and what he saw made him nervous. His long-range scanners were detecting debris fields scattered throughout the sector. Lots of debris fields. More metal and wreckage than should exist in any single star system. Lisa pushed the ship forward slowly and carefully. The gravitational anomalies were getting stronger, and she had to constantly adjust their course to avoid being pulled off track. Whatever was causing these distortions had incredible power. The Defiance was a tough ship, but Lisa could feel it struggling against forces that seemed to grab at them from every direction. As they moved deeper into the sector, the debris fields became visible on their main screen. Captain Morrison ordered Lisa to take them closer to investigate. What they saw made everyone on the bridge go quiet. The wreckage belonged to spaceships, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The debris stretched out in all directions as far as their sensors could reach. These were not human ships. The designs were alien and came from many different civilizations. Tony ran scans on the wreckage, and his face went pale. Some of the ships were built with Zephyrian technology, which was supposed to be indestructible. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled half the galaxy for 2,000 years, because their battlecruisers could survive almost anything. But here their ships were twisted into metal fragments, just like all the others, started picking up signals from the debris. Not new signals, but old ones trapped in the wreckage like ghosts. Her translation programs worked to decode fragmentary messages in dozens of different alien languages. Most were distress calls, but some were longer transmissions that told a frightening story. Each fleet had come to Sector 7 Alpha for the same reason. They had heard rumors of an ancient weapon cache hidden somewhere in this region. Advanced technology from a long-dead civilization that could give any species control over the galaxy. Fleet after fleet had arrived looking for this treasure, but none of them had found weapons. Instead, they had encountered something the aliens called the Hungry Dark. The final transmissions from each fleet described the same thing. Shadows that moved between the stars. Darkness that consumed both matter and energy. Ships being pulled apart by things that should not exist. Captain Morrison made a decision that his crew did not like. He ordered Lisa to continue deeper into the sector despite the growing evidence that they were flying into a trap. Ben Hayes argued that they should return to Earth with this information, but Morrison refused. They had come here to find answers, and turning back now would help no one. The gravitational anomalies were getting worse. Tony discovered that they were not natural phenomena. Something was manipulating space and time itself, creating whirlpools of twisted physics that could tear a ship apart. The fact that the Defiance was still intact meant whatever was doing this was either sleeping or choosing not to destroy them. Yet Maya continued monitoring the old distress signals and found a pattern that chilled her. Every fleet that entered this sector had been destroyed within hours of arriving. But their ships had not been blown up or shot down. They had been slowly consumed piece by piece, as if something was feeding on them. Lisa noticed movement in the shadows between the larger pieces of wreckage. At first she thought it was debris drifting in space, but the movement was too purposeful, too alive. She enhanced the visual display, and what she saw made her hands freeze on the controls. The darkness between the destroyed ships was not empty space. It was filled with something that absorbed light and seemed to flow like liquid. Tendrils of pure black reached out from one piece of wreckage to another, as if the shadows themselves were searching for something. Ben Hayes activated the ship's defensive systems, but his weapons targeting computers could not lock onto the moving darkness. How do you shoot at something that might not even be made of normal matter? The shadows seemed to exist in the spaces between reality, where conventional weapons would be useless. Tony ran every scan he could think of, but his instruments could barely detect the shadow entities. They registered as empty space most of the time, but occasionally his sensors would pick up massive energy readings that vanished before he could analyze them. Whatever these things were, they existed partially outside normal space and time. Shadows began moving toward the Defiance. Not quickly, but with obvious intent. Maya watched her communication screens fill with static as the approaching darkness interfered with their electronic systems. The shadows were not just moving through space, they were affecting the very fabric of reality around them. Captain Morrison ordered battle stations, but everyone knew their weapons would probably be useless. Lisa prepared the engines for emergency hyperspace jump, but the gravitational distortions might prevent them from escaping. They were trapped in a graveyard of alien ships with something approaching that had destroyed every other vessel that entered this sector. The first shadow tendril touched the hull of the Defiance, and everyone expected to die. But instead of being torn apart or consumed, the ship held together. The experimental metamaterial armor that protected the Defiance was reacting differently to the shadow entities than the alien ship hulls had. Maya felt something strange happening to her mind as the shadows pressed against their ship. Instead of fear or pain, she experienced something like curiosity. The entities seemed surprised that the human ship was not being destroyed by their touch. For the first time in centuries, they had encountered something that could survive contact. With them, the bridge lights flickered as more shadow tendrils wrapped around the Defiance, but the ship remained intact. Whatever these shadow entities were, they seemed more interested in studying the humans than destroying them. Maya realized they might be about to make first contact with something that every other species in the galaxy feared more than death itself. The shadow entities wrapped around the USS Defiance like curious fingers exploring something new and unexpected. Tony Kim watched his engineering displays with amazement as the ship's experimental armor held against forces that had torn apart every other vessel in this graveyard. The metamaterial hull was designed using human theoretical physics rather than copied alien technology, and that difference was keeping them alive. Maya Rodriguez felt the strangest sensation as the shadow tendrils pressed against the ship. Through her neural interface headset, she could sense something trying to communicate, but not with words or sounds. The entities were projecting pure emotion and intent directly into her mind. Fear, hunger, loneliness, and an ache so deep it made her want to cry. Captain Morrison stood behind Maya's chair as she worked to establish contact with the beings outside their ship. Ben Hayes had his finger on the emergency escape button, but Lisa Carter shook her head when he looked at her. The gravitational distortions around them were too strong for a hyperspace jump. If they tried to escape now, the ship would be torn apart by dimensional forces. Maya closed her eyes and opened her mind to the alien presence pressing against their hull. What she experienced was not the mindless hunger that the destroyed alien fleets had reported. Instead, she felt ancient intelligence wrapped in endless sorrow. These entities were not monsters. They were refugees from a catastrophe so vast that it had consumed their entire universe. Through the connection, Maya saw flashes of memory that belonged to the shadow beings. She saw a civilization of incredible beauty and power that had built wonders across multiple dimensions. They called themselves the architects, and they had shaped reality itself, like artists working with clay. But their universe had been devoured by something even worse than themselves, and they had been left, trapped between dimensions, forever hungry and unable to die. Tony noticed that his instruments were picking up new readings. As Maya made contact with the entities, the shadows were not just empty darkness. They were matter and energy from another reality that had been compressed and twisted by the destruction of their universe. They existed in the spaces between normal space and time, which explained why conventional weapons could not hurt them. Ben Hayes realized that the alien fleets had not been destroyed by malicious attack. The shadow entities had tried to feed on the alien ships because they were starving. But the process of feeding had killed the aliens and consumed their vessels. The entities could not control their hunger, even when they did not want to hurt anyone. Lisa felt her neural patterns being scanned by something vast and alien as the shadows continued their examination of the ship. But instead of the consuming drain that other species had experienced, she felt only gentle curiosity. The shadow beings seemed fascinated by human brain patterns, which resonated differently with their dimensional frequency than any other known species. Maya opened her eyes and spoke to her crewmates while maintaining the mental connection with the entities. She explained that the shadow beings were not evil. They were the last survivors of a dead universe who had been trapped in this sector of space for thousands of years. Every ship that came here either fled in terror or was accidentally consumed when the entities tried to make contact. The largest shadow entity began to separate itself from the others and approached the bridge of the Defiance. Through the main viewing screen, The crew could see darkness taking on a vaguely humanoid shape. Maya felt its attention focus on her specifically as it recognized her as the one who had successfully made contact. "Captain," Morrison asked Maya too. "Find out what the entities wanted." Through her neural link, Maya posed the question and received an answer that changed everything she thought she knew about galactic politics. A shadow being explained that it had been waiting for a species capable of withstanding their dimensional bleed-through. Every other race that encountered them was either consumed by the contact or driven insane by exposure to their twisted reality. Humans were different. Their chaotic neural patterns and stubborn refusal to accept impossibility allowed them to survive interaction with beings from another dimension. Maya learned that human brains were naturally adapted to handle contradictory information and impossible situations. What drove other species mad just made humans more curious. The shadow entity that Maya had begun thinking of as Echo shared more of its memories with her. She saw the truth behind the galactic warnings that had brought them here. The major alien civilizations had not sent warnings to protect other species from the shadow entities. They had sent warnings to prevent anyone from discovering that the entities were not actually dangerous to those who approached them correctly. Tony, Kim's engineering scans revealed the shocking truth that Echo was sharing with Maya. The gravitational anomalies and energy signatures throughout Sector 7 Alpha were not natural phenomena. They were artificial constructs designed to keep the shadow entities trapped in this region of space. Someone had built a dimensional prison around the survivors of the dead universe. Echo explained through Maya that many galactic civilizations had been secretly harvesting the unique energy signatures that the trapped entities produced. The reality warping effects caused by their presence between dimensions generated power that could fuel incredible technologies. The alien empires had been using the shadow entities as an energy source while keeping them contained and starving. Ben Hayes checked his tactical databases and found evidence supporting Echo's claims. Many of the most advanced alien technologies required energy sources that were never fully explained. Zephyrian battle armor that could phase through solid matter. Crystalline communication systems that worked faster than light. All of these innovations required the kind of dimensional manipulation that only the trapped entities could provide. Maya felt Echo's gratitude as she continued to maintain contact without being consumed or driven mad. For the first time in centuries, the entity was able to communicate with someone who could understand their situation. Through their connection, Echo showed her the location of the dimensional anchors that kept them trapped in this sector. Ancient machines hidden throughout the debris field that prevented the shadow entities from returning to their home dimension. Captain Morrison faced an impossible decision as Maya relayed Echo's information to the crew. They could return to Earth with news of the galactic conspiracy and leave the shadow entities trapped forever. Or they could help the entities escape their prison and risk making enemies of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Lisa Carter pointed out that helping the shadow entities would give humanity access to dimensional manipulation, technology that was centuries ahead of anything Earth currently possessed. But it would also mean declaring war on alien empires that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Echo sensed the crew's uncertainty and made an offer through Maya that stunned everyone on the bridge. If humanity would help free the shadow entities from their dimensional prison, the surviving architects would share their reality manipulation abilities with human civilization. They would become allies rather than the terror that other species believe them to be. The choice was clear, but terrifying. Humanity could gain incredible power and make allies of beings that existed beyond normal reality. But they would also be challenging the established order of galactic civilization. Captain Morrison looked at his crew and saw determination in their eyes. They had come here seeking answers, and they had found something much more important. They had found beings who needed their help and were willing to share unimaginable knowledge in return. Maya Rodriguez felt Echo's memories flowing through her mind like water through her fingers. The shadow entity was showing her the truth about galactic civilization that no human had ever suspected. For thousands of years, the major alien empires had maintained their power not through superior technology or wisdom, but by exploiting beings like the trapped. Architects who existed between dimensions. Echo revealed the locations of 17 other dimensional prisons, scattered throughout the galaxy. Each one contained entities from destroyed realities who were being used as living batteries to power alien technology. The Zephyrian Empire's invincible battle fleets drew their phasing abilities from tortured beings who could manipulate matter. The crystalline hegemony's faster-than-light communication network was powered by entities who existed outside normal time. Captain Morrison listened to Maya's translation with growing anger. Humanity had spent decades believing that alien civilizations were more advanced and peaceful than humans. The discovery that their technology was built on the suffering of interdimensional refugees changed everything. These were not the wise galactic neighbors that human scientists had hoped to meet. Someday. Tony Kim studied the dimensional anchor points that Echo had revealed to Maya. The machines keeping the shadow entities trapped were incredibly sophisticated, but they were also very old. Thousands of years of operation had created weaknesses in their containment fields. With the right approach and some creative engineering, the anchors could be destroyed. Ben Hayes analyzed the tactical situation they would face if they helped the shadow entities escape. Every major power in the galaxy benefited from keeping the architects imprisoned. If humanity freed them, it would be seen as an act of war against civilizations that had ruled space for millennia. Earth would become the target of combined alien fleets that vastly outnumbered human forces. Lisa Carter understood the danger, but she also saw the opportunity. The shadow entities possessed abilities that could revolutionize human technology. Ships that could exist in multiple dimensions at once. Weapons that could strike through solid matter. Defensive systems that made attacks pass through empty space. With the architects as allies, humanity could become a major power overnight. Echo sensed the crew's internal debate and shared another crucial piece of information with Maya. The shadow entities were not the only beings trapped by the galactic empires. Throughout space, there were dozens of species that had been enslaved or exploited because they possessed abilities that the major powers wanted to control. Freeing the architects would be the first step in liberating many others. Maya felt a connection forming between herself and Echo that went deeper than simple communication. The entity was offering to share not just knowledge, but actual abilities. Humans who formed partnerships with shadow entities could learn to manipulate reality in ways that seemed impossible. They could phase through solid objects, travel between dimensions, and reshape matter with focused thought. The crew of the Defiance faced a choice that would determine the future of humanity in the galaxy. They could return home with information about the alien conspiracy and let Earth prepare defenses against civilizations that might someday threaten human space. Or they could strike the first blow in a war for galactic freedom that would put Earth at the center of conflicts that had been building for thousands of years. Captain Morrison called for a vote among his crew. Ben Hayes argued for caution, pointing out that Earth was not ready for war against multiple alien empires. Tony Kim supported the mission to free the shadow entities, but wanted guarantees that humanity would not be abandoned if the situation became too dangerous. Lisa Carter voted to help the architects without hesitation, believing that humanity's greatest strength had always been standing up for those who could not defend themselves. Maya cast the deciding vote based on what she had learned from Echo's memories. The galactic empires had built their power on cruelty and exploitation. They kept other species as slaves and used suffering beings as tools. If humanity wanted to join galactic civilization, it should be to change it, not to become part of the system based on oppression. Echo expressed gratitude and relief when Maya told the entity about their decision. The shadow being began showing her the specific locations of the dimensional anchors and how they could be destroyed. The process would require precise timing and coordination, but it was possible with the technology aboard the Defiance. Tony Kim started modifying the ship's weapon systems based on Echo's instructions. The dimensional anchors could not be destroyed by conventional attacks, but they were vulnerable to specific energy frequencies that could disrupt their containment fields. The Defiance's experimental plasma cannons could be modified to generate the required dimensional interference. Lisa Carter plotted a course through the debris field that would take them to each anchor point while avoiding the strongest gravitational distortions. The journey would be dangerous because destroying each anchor would destabilize the local space-time and create unpredictable effects. They would have only one chance to complete the mission before the distortions became too severe for navigation. Ben Hayes calculated the probable response from alien civilizations once they realized what was happening. The nearest major fleet was 3 days away at maximum hyperspace speed. If the crew of the Defiance could destroy all the anchors within 48 hours, the shadow entities would be free before any military response could arrive. Echo warned Maya that freeing the architects would not be the end of their troubles. The galactic empires would never forgive humanity for destroying their source of dimensional energy. Earth would face retaliation that could destroy human civilization unless they were prepared to defend themselves with their new allies. Maya accepted the risk on behalf of her species. Through her connection with Echo, she could sense the gratitude and hope of hundreds of shadow entities who had been trapped for millennia. These beings had once built wonders that spanned multiple realities, and they were offering to share that knowledge with humanity. The potential benefits outweighed any danger. The modification of the Defiance's weapons took 6 hours, during which more shadow entities gathered around their ship. Maya maintained contact with several of them simultaneously, learning about their lost civilization and the abilities they could teach to humans. The architects had mastered sciences that Earth's greatest physicists could barely imagine. Echo revealed that the shadow entities had been watching humanity's development for decades. They had seen how humans treated other species with compassion and curiosity rather than exploitation. Unlike the galactic empires that enslaved or destroyed anyone, different humanity seemed to embrace diversity and seek understanding. This was why the architects were willing to trust humans with their most closely guarded secrets. As Tony completed the weapon modifications, Captain Morrison gave the order to begin their assault on the dimensional prison. The first anchor was located inside a massive piece of wreckage from a Zephyrian battlecruiser. Lisa piloted the Defiance through the twisted metal while Tony prepared to fire the modified plasma cannon. The destruction of the first dimensional anchor sent shock waves through local space that made the ship shake like a leaf in a hurricane. But Echo and the other shadow entities immediately began moving more freely as part of their prison dissolved. Maya felt their joy and relief through her neural connection as beings who had been trapped for thousands of years experienced the first taste of freedom. The USS Defiance dropped out of hyperspace near Earth with 3 shadow entities as voluntary passengers aboard the ship. Maya Rodriguez sat in her quarters with Echo's presence gently touching her mind as they approached humanity's home world. The journey back had taken 2 weeks, during which she had learned to communicate with the architects without her neural interface equipment. The connection between humans and shadow entities was deeper than anyone had expected. Captain Morrison received an emergency communication from Earth Defense Command before they reached orbit. Admiral Susan Blake's face appeared on the main screen with an expression of barely controlled panic. The approach of alien entities toward Earth had triggered every defense system humanity possessed. Nuclear missiles were armed and ready to fire at the first sign of hostile action. Maya quickly transmitted the full report of their mission to Sector 7 Alpha, while Tony Kim provided technical data about the dimensional anchor destruction. The information caused chaos among Earth's governments as leaders tried to understand what their exploration team had accomplished. Humanity had made contact with beings from another universe and formed an alliance that would reshape galactic politics forever. Echo and the two other shadow entities who had chosen to come to Earth began demonstrating their abilities to human scientists. In a secure facility in Nevada, they showed researchers how to manipulate dimensional barriers and create matter from pure energy. Dr. Carl Bennett watched in amazement as shadow tendrils reshaped metal like clay and opened doorways between different layers of reality. The technology sharing sessions revealed capabilities that seemed like magic to human understanding. The architects could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, which allowed them to travel anywhere in the galaxy instantly. They could phase matter through solid objects or make it completely immaterial. Most importantly, they could teach these abilities to humans who formed the proper mental connections with them. President Martinez called an emergency session of the United Nations to discuss humanity's response to the galactic conspiracy that Maya had uncovered. Many nations wanted to return the shadow entities to their prison and apologize to the alien empires for interfering with galactic affairs. The European Space Alliance threatened to break all ties with American space operations if the entities were not immediately removed from Earth. Blake argued that keeping the shadow entities on Earth was too dangerous. The galactic empires would see humanity as a threat that needed to be eliminated before human architect technology became too advanced. She recommended returning Echo and the others to space and focusing on defensive preparations for the inevitable alien response. But Captain Morrison had been promoted to Admiral after his successful mission, and he disagreed with the defensive approach. Through Maya's translations, Echo had revealed the locations of other dimensional prisons throughout the galaxy. Humanity could strike first and free dozens of enslaved species before the major powers realized what was happening. Attack was the best defense when facing enemies who would never accept human existence. Lisa Carter had become the first human to pilot a ship enhanced with architect technology. The modified shuttle could phase through solid matter and travel between star systems without using hyperspace. She demonstrated the craft's abilities for military observers who realized that conventional space warfare had become obsolete overnight. Weapons that could strike from parallel dimensions made traditional defenses useless. Tony Kim worked with Echo to upgrade the USS Defiance and two other human ships with dimensional manipulation systems. The process required human crew members to form mental partnerships with shadow entities who would guide the reality warping effects. Not every human could handle the connection, but those who could become capable of impossible feats. Maya discovered that her link with Echo had given her abilities she never expected to possess. She could sense communications across dimensional barriers and translate languages from species that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. Her consciousness could travel to other star systems instantly by riding along dimensional pathways that the architects used for communication. Ben Hayes analyzed intelligence that Maya gathered through her enhanced abilities and found evidence of a massive alien fleet gathering at the edge of human space. The Zephyrian Empire had convinced 6 other major powers to join an expedition to Earth. Over 300 ships were approaching with orders to capture or destroy the shadow entities and punish humanity for interfering with galactic order. The combined alien fleet sent a message to Earth demanding immediate surrender of the dimensional entities and submission to galactic authority. The transmission was broadcast in 17 different languages to ensure that humans understood the severity of their situation. surrender or face complete annihilation by forces that had conquered hundreds of worlds. Admiral Morrison refused. The alien demands and prepared humanity's response. The USS Defiance led a defense fleet of 12 ships that had been enhanced with architect technology. Each vessel could exist in multiple dimensions and strike enemies from impossible angles. Human crews working with shadow entity partners commanded abilities that no alien civilization had ever faced in battle. Maya used her dimensional communication abilities to broadcast the truth about galactic exploitation across known space, while the human fleet moved to intercept the approaching aliens. Her message revealed how the major empires had built their power by enslaving interdimensional refugees and using their suffering to fuel advanced technology. The transmission reached dozens of oppressed species who had never known why there. People disappeared or why certain regions of space were forbidden. The battle between human and alien forces lasted only 6 hours, but it changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Human ships phased through enemy attacks and struck from parallel dimensions where alien weapons could not reach them. The Defiance materialized inside a Zephian battlecruiser and destroyed it from within before disappearing back into dimensional space. Lisa Carter led a squadron of enhanced fighters that attacked the alien fleet from 5 different dimensions simultaneously. Enemy ships found themselves under fire from directions that should not exist, while their own weapons passed harmlessly through targets that existed slightly outside normal reality. The technological advantage was so overwhelming that most alien ships surrendered rather than face complete destruction. Echo and the other shadow entities who had remained in space began attacking the dimensional prisons that Maya had identified throughout the galaxy. Ancient containment systems that had operated for thousands of years were destroyed in coordinated strikes that freed dozens of enslaved species. Beings from dead universes, parallel realities, and twisted dimensions emerged from captivity to join humanity's growing alliance. Captain Jake Morrison, who had first answered Maya's phone call about the alien warning signal, now commanded a fleet of interdimensional ships, crewed by humans and entities from across the spectrum of reality. Earth had become a sanctuary for refugees from dimensional disasters and outcasts who had been exploited by the galactic empires. The major alien civilizations found themselves facing rebellions on hundreds of worlds as species that had been enslaved for millennia learned the truth about their oppression. Without access to dimensional energy sources, their advanced technologies began failing. Fleets that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years became vulnerable to attacks from beings they had tortured and exploited. Maya received her first communication from the liberated entities as they established contact with Earth through dimensional pathways. Dozens of species were asking the same question that would define humanity's role in galactic affairs for generations to come. Are you the humans who freed the shadow entities? We need your help. Echo remained on Earth as an ambassador between humanity and the growing alliance of interdimensional beings. Through Maya, the entity helped establish communication protocols with species that existed in realities so alien that normal contact was impossible. Earth became the center of a new galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than exploitation. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, looking out at a star field that had been transformed by human actions. Humanity had entered galactic politics not as junior partners seeking acceptance, but as liberators who changed the fundamental nature of how civilizations interacted. The signal that had warned everyone to stay away from Sector 7 Alpha had led humanity to allies who would help them reshape the galaxy according to principles of freedom and cooperation rather than fear and oppression.